Great.
All
So
right.
welcome everybody. We've got a team member of level ones in the engineering side. His name is Brian
Zazzara.
Zazzara, yes. Brian Zazzara, and he is one of the co-founders of the ZPE project group. So essentially these are, you know, a lot of CE5 members. We met through the Stephen Greer
Yep.
team, and some of you may know that Brian had provided level one with the Setchka files, which got us started down this path. And it's a real honor and privilege to have Brian here. And I'm really looking forward to our talk. And I'm sure a lot of you will have some very interesting insights from this, as well as questions. And I'm already looking forward to our next talk. So that said, I'd like
Thank
to
you,
have
John.
Brian, I'll let Brian kind of jump off. I'll get started here. And Brian, yeah, just kind of give us a brief background of how you got started,
Sure.
perhaps, and a little
Sure,
bit
sure. Well,
about.
thank you for having me. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here. I really love what you've created with L1 communities. And I love that I could have been a part of that initial inspiration, passing along the Sajeka files, which is a treasure trove of sequestered information from the last century. It's kind of the overall tone of what we're working with is developing things that have been sequestered for the last century, 120 years of science, that has been kept from most of humanity, for various special interests, most of which is oil. But there's a future for us in the very near future that can be revolutionary. About a year and a half, 2 years ago, one of the original co-founders of the ZPE project group, which was a scientific offshoot, originally of just CE5 cosmic ambassadors, from Dr. Stephen Greer's group. Stephen Greer does a lot of work with disclosure. He's been talking about this energy stuff, and he just released a documentary film called The Lost Century and How to Reclaim It, which really speaks to a lot of what we're dealing with. But really, Matt Eisenberg and myself, the original co-founders of the group, were in a Zoom call with Dr. Greer 2 years ago, and he's like, if anybody wants to pitch in and do this, I don't have time to do this. And Matt Eisenberg and I raised our hands. We're like, I guess we're the ones we've been waiting for. So reluctantly, if nobody else is going to do it. So Matt's an engineer. I've been studying this stuff since I was 15 years old. I'm 42 now, so it's a good chunk of my life spent studying, Nikola Tesla and other scientists like that and all of their material. But I've always thought that one of my life's goals was to bring free energy to the world. I've been wanting to do that again since I was 14, 15 years old. And now that I have children, there's a different perspective on life. We want to leave the world a little bit better for the next generation. So let me just share quickly what our ZPE project group, if anybody cares, it's ZPEPG.com or the ZPEprojectgroup.org. The ZPE project group exists to serve humanity, our children, and our children's children altruistically through the research, development, and dissemination of verified zero-point energy device designs open source to the world. That's what we're doing over at ZPEPG. But we've been at this for a good couple of years, and we've got some projects in the works, and we've compiled a lot of information, and that's one of those things that we're here to talk about today.
We're all volunteers, I should add, at this point as well.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah, so we're a 501c3. We just got
uh,
approved. We're an NGO, totally not for profit. None of us take salaries or stipends. It's all self-funded, entirely volunteers. We've got some of the best database engineers, AI people, electrical engineers, material scientists, geophysicists, actual physicists, theoretical quantum physicists, and then a lot of just administrative people and people who share the vision, who are there because they can attract people, situations, and circumstances to help the group. So everybody has a place. If they feel led to change the world, that's what we're about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Brian. And I know, you know, because of everyone's passion on this, and the size of the group, I feel there's some real possibilities, and that's kind of where I wanted to jump into next. I know that
Sure.
you and I have discussed this quite a bit, but I'm
And you've
sure
gone
that,
down the rabbit hole a few times, John.
yeah, everyone out there, I'm sure, is very excited to learn at least a little bit about the three. I know you and I've discussed three different technology silos, so the every specific areas of technology that are being pursued by the CP project group, and there's one in
Yeah, can we go
particular you
into that a
guys are,
little bit?
yeah, the one in particular you guys are mostly focused on. Whatever you can share along those lines, I think would be fascinating.
Sure. Give you a brief overview, right? So there's a lot of different ways to produce energy. There's a lot of different ways to stimulate the what we call the quantum vacuum, or the field, the ether field. 0 point energy is this term. People call it all sorts of different things. Um, some people even call this field the ether, or chi, or prana. 0 point, the Dirac sea, the Planck scale, um, frill. I mean, there's a lot of different names for it in a lot of different cultures over the eons of time. But what we're talking about is the fabric of reality, basically the sea of everything that is what we call empty space. Okay. So what we've found is that there's different ways to stimulate it, or perturb it, to use a scientific term, poking through this field and getting something to come out of the field into reality, into this third density reality. Um, there's a lot of ways to do that. So one of the ways that's been talked about in science is called the Casimir effect. That's Casimir.
Mm,
Casimir effect in modern science has been talked about at a very, very, very microscopic level, like really thin spaces between plates. That's one of our silos, is Casimir devices that we're looking into, but not just on that microscopic level, but also on a macroscopic level. Understanding that everything is imbued within this 0 point energy, this quantum vacuum. So even plates that are, an inch apart, that are macroscopic, can still create a Casimir cavitation effect, or a resonance effect, because of the way that we look at reality is a little bit different than it's taught in the science books, or at least how it's been taught over the last 80 years. So that's one of the silos. We don't have any working designs in that, but we're getting a lot of information that's coming in from various sources, and there's a team working on those.
mm,
Another one that we worked on when we first founded the group is the electrodynamic devices. Okay, this would be using electricity, very low currents, high voltage, and magnetism to kind of swirl the ether. What we
right.
found is that if you can swirl the ether and then apply orthogonal perpendicular fields to it, a lot of interesting things happen. Devices like this would be the TPU, Toroidal Power Unit, that was back maybe 15, 20 years ago, was shown, of course, before the government stepped in and ransacked the office. It happens a lot.
Who's off
Um,
that?
the scientist, I can't go into that too much now, but
Okay.
because we're on an open line.
Yeah.
But the another one would be the Floyd Sweet device. That's a very popular one. Now we know the Floyd Sweet device actually worked,
Mm,
and it used very, very little current, like a 9-volt battery worth of current, but it could generate over 3,000 times output. And that was just using, magnets and orthogonal field intersection. So that's electrodynamic devices. We have a few, some using geometries of the universe, like star tetrahedrons, some using toroids and toruses. There's a lot of potential there. Okay. But, thinking about technology, that would be the difference between a fax machine and an email or a text message. It'll work, but
mm,
it's relatively ancient technology compared to what we're really want to do. So we could develop devices like that, but the amount of output and the complexity of the devices kind of get a little cumbersome.
Mm.
Um, Another silo that is very fun to think about, I've been studying this for 20 years, is combustible water. This would be the Stan Meyer type technologies, Walt Jenkins, those contemporaries in the mid 90s. This was a big thing.
Mm.
Stan Meyer and Walt Jenkins both have dune buggies that were just running on water. You know, you think, how do you use water as fuel? Well, we're studying that. There's a whole team studying the combustibility effects of water based on the actual. Um, we're not talking about hydrolysis or something where we're making a hydrogen fuel cell, right? That can be done. There's Toyota and the different companies are doing that, but we're actually talking about using water and using special resonating effects. Okay, this is phononic, meaning sound, and photonic, meaning light, to resonate the H2O into something slightly different. And that something slightly different can be combustible with just fuel, with just water as fuel. A similar technology in that silo used to be called H4 gas, again, part of the Walt Jenkins material. This was taking air, like the air around us, right,
Hmm.
and pulling water out of the air, then treating that water, which would basically be a distilled water at that point, pure, treating it like we said with these different electric effects and sound and light, and then using that as a fuel source for all of our vehicles. So you can actually take all the vehicles that are already out there and convert them instead of going out and buying hybrids or buying electrical vehicles,
Mm.
and convert
Fascinating.
these vehicles that are combustion engine vehicles. And
Mm.
instead of putting in unleaded fuel, you can put in water.
Wow.
And those convert, that exists. Okay, that technology exists. It's proven to exist. The scientists, a lot of them that worked on that, have since passed, and we have been in the works of acquiring the IP for those technologies. We've been in talks with the companies. We've tracked it down, which is the hardest part,
Mm.
and we are in talks to acquire that technology, and a brilliant engineering mind that not only has all of that information in his head, but the company he's with also owns the IP for it. So that's something where if somebody came in and gave us a couple $1 million, that's one of those things we could fund tomorrow and really start working on some life-changing things that could
Interesting.
really make a difference in the world.
Quick
So those are
question.
the silos, other than the main one, which is the fun one that we're actually going to talk about,
Yeah.
where there's some really neat effects.
Hey,
Our
Brian, on
Go ahead.
the on that conversion model, what
Sure.
prevents the company from trying to market or commercialize that technology? Why aren't they doing something with that?
Well, I'm not. I promised that I wouldn't get into conspiracy theories and stuff today,
Or maybe
right?
like
But
a 30
what you
second
have to
overview.
understand is that there's a $13 trillion oil and gas industry, and a lot of these technologies over time have been bought and shelved just to keep them from getting out, because it's cheaper to do that than to think along these lines. Scientists like Stan Meyer, they get a patent on it, but they don't put the secret sauce in. The actual resonant information's not there. You can't go and take a Stan Meyer patent and then reproduce that technology. And he took it to his grave. And then another one whose warehouse was ransacked by agents, whatever. Um, Walt Jenkins' material was transferred, intellectual property was transferred, and when we were looking to talk to Walt for in the pre-production of the Lost Century, he was basically on his deathbed, with cancer. Um, but in that time, he did transfer a lot of that knowledge to an individual who we are in communication with, in the Clearwater, Florida area,
Mm.
that has that. So, today, in today's day and age, I think there's enough push for green energy technology. There's only so much that politicians can say for so long that we have to focus on green energy technology before they have to bite their tongue because they're the ones suppressing the technology. You know, we have one of the things we're working on the political side, there's 6,000 patents under the Invention Secrecy Act that have been secretized that have to do with medical technology, free energy technology, alternative fuel, all of these things. You know, there's solar panels that could be 90-95% efficient that were invented in the 70s that are still secretized. You know, that carries a 20-year prison sentence just for working on it in the United States or talking about it to people. And that's something that, you know, politicians could reverse in one signature. So you have to ask yourself, why aren't they? You know, it's easier to go out and say, you know, wind and solar are what's going to save us when, you know, we know that that's crap. Those technologies are by law inefficient. You know, you can't go out and buy better than a 25% efficiency solar cell. You can't. It's not allowed. They can't produce them. You know, and that's so these barriers to entry have been there. That's what's precipitated this over the last half century to a century. But in today, and I think we're getting a little ahead in your in your write-up here, but what's different today is in the last couple of years, there's been things happening behind the scenes that I won't get into, but there a lot of the old guard that have been preventing these things from coming out are either gone or, you know, being phased out of their positions of power and authority worldwide. We're not even just talking in the United States. And with that, as long as we, quote, stay in our lane, okay, we're not talking about flying cars, electromagnetic gravitic propulsion. We're not talking about teleportation, jump gate type technology. I mean, it's all the same tech. Once you figure out one, you kind of have them all, which is why these things are sequestered so hard. The idea has been, you know, if you release this technology, somebody could use it to build a bomb, and then they could use the technology to deliver the bomb to a government office before we even know what to do with it. And yeah, I mean, that's true. But at what point do we put the future of humanity in humanity's hands and say, okay, maybe we can actually have scarcity and water and food and power, all of these things given to us with this technology, and we don't make weapons that can destroy ourselves with it. At what point do we step up to the plate and say, okay, we can do this as a society, as humanity? We're mature enough to use a knife without cutting ourselves with it. Do we know that that's the case? No, right? But at the end of the day, we have to have a little bit of trust that you know, that getting this out into the hands of the people is a better alternative than leaving it sequestered for another 50 to 100 years.
Yeah,
in my humble opinion.
good point.
So
I agree. So sorry when I cut you off. I think we're getting into the third silo, perhaps
the fourth silo. Yeah, well,
fourth silo.
let me just to finish what I was saying there, really just to sum it up. The powers that be, whatever you want to call it, they, right? It has come out that in the last year, as long as we stay within our lines, right? No weaponization, no transportation, no telecommunication, and no electromagnetic gravitics propulsion. They are ready for a free energy over unity is the term device to come out. They are not ready to release it themselves because that would come with it a lot of responsibilities of admitting that the military industrial complex has been complicit in holding humanity back for a century. They don't want to look bad. So groups like ours are going to be the ones to do this. And, you know, you'll see things being released, trickled over time in academia, academic journals and things like that. But, you know, realistically, this technology exists. We know it exists. We know at least a dozen different scientists over the last 80 years that have come out with it, proven it, demonstrated it. We know modern scientists, because we're working with them, that have this technology. and have been approached by the governments and it's been sequestered, and others that have been approached by the governments and hired. And we're working with one of those to further the development of this in a legal, safe manner, rather than trying to do what all these other groups have done. Oh, we got this thing and it's amazing and it's going to make us billions of dollars and change the world. We're not monetizing this.
Mm.
That's where these people have come up with problems. They want to monetize it. They want to make millions of dollars, and that goes against the oil and gas industry. We're doing this completely altruistically. It will not be monetized. There will be no intellectual property holdbacks. We'll most likely, put it out there under Creative Commons. So it still has to be, licensed, but it's licensed for free, which prevents companies from coming in and taking what we release and then patenting it and shelving it, which is a whole nother issue, right? So there's
Wow.
all these different safeguards that we're putting in place to prevent the problems from happening before. We know of scientists and groups where, they came out with this and it was too late. I mean, by the time they reach out for help, half the team is dead. We're all of them are. One individual out in, the one of the Eastern countries, brilliant scientist, created something just like about what we're going to discuss now, which is a solid state device. It's the last silo. And this was, again, 15 some years ago. And he tested it. It worked. It's documented. It was proven. And he was going in front of an electrical engineering and physicist conference. He was in his hotel room. And he got his device and threw himself out of a window. Which apparently is hard to do, but they seem to do that a lot in those Eastern countries. So,
Jeez.
It's dangerous to go against the status quo. But as you and I both know, somebody has to do it, and the status is not quo. I mean, we got to do something, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. So the fourth silo. Fourth silo is solid state. This is like the holy grail of over unity devices. This is not a perpetual motion machine, which is what scientists will tell you, because that's what they're paid to say. This is not a perpetual energy thing where, something's moving and as soon as you try to tap it with a load, nothing works. This is not one of those videos on YouTube, which there's thousands of them. Those are all crap. Okay. And don't go and waste your time looking up videos on YouTube for free energy, because they're all there to capture your eyes and monetize you at 9 cents a view.
Wow.
That's what they do.
Okay.
There's no real devices. Okay, let me rephrase that. There's a couple really interesting projects that you might find on YouTube, but for the most part, if it's real, YouTube would have censored it, because they're very big on censoring information about certain topics, and that is one of them.
Yeah.
So imagine a device the size of a shoebox. Okay, think small Honda home generator. Okay, but you look at the little home generator and there's this little cylindrical thing that actually does the generating. There's a motor of some kind, and then there's a little breakout panel that you plug stuff into.
Okay.
A solid state device would be this little cylindrical thing, size of a shoebox, slightly larger than a Pringles can. Okay, it has inside of it technology that is remarkably simple in its scientific design, but it's using old science and old physics in a new way that hasn't been done, because it goes against some of the things that are taught in science and physics. But we're trying to do something that hasn't been done by modern science and modern physics, so you have to think outside of the box. Everybody that's come up with these technologies has said the same thing. It's fairly simple, and it's surprisingly simple that you usually overlook it. But that's how this works. So a solid state device has stuff inside, uses low currents, very low input. It's not connected to batteries. It's not connected to the grid. It can have as little input as just a 9-volt battery or one of the push button actuators on your Prius that says start stops. It's a little charge to get it to jump start. And then it starts to build its effect. These devices work by tapping the ether flux. Using big terms, you don't have to know what that means, but we're basically taking these background quantum vacuum fluctuations and tapping it and creating a pump, creating an element, a situation that stabilizes a pump. Okay, like you go and you turn on your hose spigot, there's always a pump because there's a pressure of energy behind that faucet, behind that spigot. Turn it on, stuff comes out your hose, turn it off, hose goes off.
Okay.
Small background. In a thimble, for people who know what a thimble is still in 2024, but basically the size of your thumb, right? In a little thimble shot glass, say a shot glass, fine,
Okay.
of empty space, there is enough potential energy, 0 point energy. We're talking E equals MC squared type energy, density of energy in this empty space to boil off all of the oceans on our planet, like that.
Amazing.
In a coffee mug of free empty space, the 0 point energy potential in that amount of space is enough to power the entire world's electrical grid for a week. So consider if you have a pump in a small little device the size of a shoebox, it is a virtually unlimited tap of energy. What the limitation is the device that you create and its physical capabilities and how much you can tap from it. So people like T. Henry Murray back in the 1920s, 1930s, who were working off of Tesla's technologies, created a device like this, different oscillations and different tubes that perturbed the field in certain ways, and they were able to tap electricity to run 50, 100-watt light bulbs. It's a lot. But when they tapped it again, right before that output, they could run an entire second array of 50, 100-watt light bulbs.
Wow.
And it didn't make the light bulbs burn dimmer. They actually burned brighter. And they found that you can virtually unlimited number of taps. So one little device that we build for a household can technically run the whole block. It's just we have to think of the infrastructure designs of what's currently there. Now your house goes up to the transformer that feeds 4 houses, and the transformer goes to the local thing, which goes to the long tension. We don't need any of that.
Right.
Like everything can be run off of microgrids if this technology comes out. There's a lot to do, to get us to that level.
Right.
But that's the potential that we're talking about.
Wow.
So solid state devices are fun. We have 2 currently in the works. One of which we have a brilliant inventor working on, who is, I don't know what I'm allowed to say, but he's created devices like this and got on the radar of various governments. And now those various governments send him to other governments that they like to let them get these devices built for them. And as a private contractor with security clearances, he can do these things.
So these devices have
we're a
already been built.
corporation, so you can hire contractors.
So these devices
exactly
have obviously they've already been built. These devices.
So devices like this have been built and sequestered.
Okay.
We know that they work. What we're building is something relatively unique. We have a 2-page, 50-line requirements sheet for anybody that brings these devices to us, or that we would then hire to consult with to design the specifications. They have to meet. Very rigorous, which we had a team of engineers and scientists create this device spec sheet, basically, this list. And this particular inventor looked at the spec sheet. He's like, yeah, every single thing on that sheet. He's like, I wouldn't be building these things for heads of state. I'd be out of business if I couldn't meet these basic requirements,
Wow.
but it's a different world, right? This is the military industrial complex that has these toys. The things that they keep saying that are UAPs, they're not UAPs, they're just APs. They're not unknown, they're just unacknowledged. Quite
Unacknowledged,
literally
right?
called unacknowledged special access project, but we won't go into that today.
Yeah.
Um, so that's a very promising device. We literally are only lacking funding to source the parts. Where we want to build a handful of them so that we have, two built, tested, one see-through with, for a display, and then the parts for two more where the inventor will literally sit with our team of engineers and show us how to build one while we build one. The
Mm,
whole process is going to be documented. The custom tooling, all the specs, the schematics, everything will be published, free
great.
and open to the world.
Yeah.
This might be something where industries, there will be, we're not profiting from this, but there will be secondary markets that have to develop these things and put them out there, right? You should be able to effectively, a year from now, these things could be manufactured in China and sold retail for less than $1,000. It's going to cost us like 50,000 or so to build them, prototype level.
Hmm.
But realistically, they should be under $2,000. There's no reason why they couldn't be, especially at economies of scale. There's nothing seriously rare in them.
Okay.
Like the Floyd Sweet device, that would be great to do. They have these weird, rare barium magnets that there's just not enough of them out there. So a lot of these things, we have to look at the reproducibility of these,
Yeah.
right? If it requires something that there's only one or two of, or it takes a custom team to make, it's very difficult. Um, but yeah, so we have a lot of potential with that device. I'll come back to it in a second because I think later in our interview we want to talk about, what do we need?
Yeah.
Um, but there's another really cool device that my plan is that once we get it working, tested, and verified, I'm going to give it to you and your team first.
Mm.
I want you guys to be able to do this in your home.
Oh,
Easy.
wow.
I mean, I'm not a technical guy. I mean, I'm a technical guy, but I'm not an engineer, right? I don't know how to build circuits and all this stuff, but
Hmm.
it's easy enough that I can do it.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
yeah, and we'll be providing you with the information for this one, but we obtained, and you asked me not to go into certain things, we obtained the design specifications for this device from sources that, let's just say, they've been using this technology where they come from for a long time. We were given this information because it's time. What we were given, it's called a crystal frill generator. Just throw that out there. Is the designs for a medically healthy device, a device that would be what we would call like a quantum wellness type device, um, something that can impart waves of this 0 point energy, this frill that they call it, that's very healthy. It creates a field where your body, things that are dissonant or not resonant in your body at the DNA level, your body can repair itself in the
Hmm.
presence of this field. So there's a lot of amazing, um, let me just say, we don't prevent, cure, treat, diagnose any diseases. We don't do that. We're not doctors. Research purposes only, just run that along the bottom of the video so none of
Hmm.
us get sued or shut down by 3-letter agencies. But no, realistically, it's amazing health effects that potentially you might experience by using a device like this.
Phenomenal.
And what our team is doing, which was a component that was intentionally not given when these device specs were given, is the ability to take that same pump wave of the frill and do what we're doing, is converting it solid state, inducing a usable current from it. So the idea is you have this little thing sitting on your dining room table or your coffee table, and it's just filling the space with wonderful, vibes. and or you could have a glass of water sitting next to it. When you drink that water or wash your hair with the water and put it on your skin, it has certain potential medicinal effects
Mm.
that you may experience. But the little piece of circuitry or a little sleeve that might go around it, we can induce a usable current that might be enough current to run your house, or it might be less than that. We're working out the details. We don't really know yet. But we've got somebody who worked on the original circuitry design that has volunteered to pro bono help us develop that circuit, because they've developed a circuit that can do that in another device that they've done that works. So they're going to, without IP holdbacks, without cost to us, work on that for us, and create that energy inducing or drawing technology, so that this piece of equipment that's amazing, that's
Hmm.
easily built, can also now become a 0 point energy device. I would say roughly equivalent to what you would spend a $10,000-$20,000 solar array, which doesn't really produce a lot of electricity,
Yeah.
but it's enough. It's enough to augment things. But this is a technology that I'm convinced that the average person with a little technical experience, or at least the ability to read and follow some instructions, can reproduce for, again, under $2,000. The
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, the most expensive and hardest to get component. I mean, everything else I bought on Amazon. Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah.
Anyways, but yeah,
Yeah.
there's 3D printing involved, and there's a couple companies that do 3D printing. I think I paid $300-$400 for the 3D printing job. Shows up in a couple of weeks. If you have your own 3D printer, you can probably do it yourself. We have all the STL files and stuff that'll be given freely as part of this, with the schematics and all that. There's a signal generator, $130 on Amazon, some wire that you can get, specific wire, but very easy to find wire, magnet wire and silver wire. And then at the inside of it is a crystal, what's called a crystal frill generator. We use Vogel cut crystals, Vogel cut quartz. A lot of it's sourced in the Himalayas, so there are sourcing issues with some of those, but I have talked to a couple of the top manufacturers of those who actually know how to do the specific type of crystal cutting. It's only like 4 people on the planet that know how to do this. But instead of there being like a 10-month lead time, we've got a cutter that's been trained that can do it significantly less time. So they're working on, this is in the lead up to us releasing this, they're
Oh,
working on getting enough of these in stock. It's not rare, but there's not a lot of market for people just buying $600, $1,200 Vogel cut quartz crystals of that size. Even in
yeah.
the metaphysical field, it's a very powerful crystal, but we're
Okay.
doing very powerful things with it.
Yeah.
So that's like the most expensive and hardest to get part, but we're working on a supply chain for that in
Gotcha.
advance of us releasing this information. Hopefully there'll at least be enough for the L1 communities who want to do this to go in and grab some and play with it.
Yeah.
But that's it. I mean, it's this little thing. I'll send you, if you want to post something in the site, I'll send you some pictures, or I think I might have sent you some in the chat
Yeah.
of what it looks like. But it's just little things that's on the table. It's pretty, the
Yeah.
crystal side, and it
Wow.
just, yeah. So
So it's already emitting
that's
it's
really
already emitting
exciting.
energy for medicinal purposes.
Immediately right out of the box.
And right now you're working with someone pro bono who's actually going to develop a methodology for capturing that
Right.
the frill
Well,
that's emanating from it and inducing and generating a usable current. Is that right?
correct. Now you spot on. So let me say this, right? So we have a whole team, right? ZPE project group. There's a lot of people, and we all have our different specialties. So, and we have a lot of projects going on behind the scenes always, that we're not always like talking about it out in public, because there's a lot of research and development stuff. It's just, we just do, because
Yeah.
if we're gonna share something, it's gonna be a completed product, vetted, or an update like this. But we just did a very interesting reverse engineering project uh, that completed in the last couple of weeks. And we were informed that inside this device that we were taking apart for reverse engineering purposes, that we would find the secrets of what we were looking for, as in the circuitry or a piece of the puzzle for the missing piece for this crystal frill generator. And what we found, we looked into this thing and took this thing apart. Remember the old adage that one of these things is not like the other, one of these things does not belong. So you've got a manufactured device, and then totally out of place, sticking right in the middle of where the field effect would be generated by this device, is this little resistor bank with a couple toroids in it that nobody knows what the hell it is. And it's set right in the middle of a field that would be able to induce these gravitational waves and frill. And it is basically reverse powering the device. That's exactly what we're looking for, right? This is a little piece of simple overlooked technology that can take a field effect that we know we can pump and create usable current that it can then run itself. That, in essence, is an over unity device, which this thing that we were working on was never considered an over unity device, but when they put it together, it had this little thing in it. I mean, I've been told that like Philips and these different companies that have CT scans, MRI scanners, there's 0-point energy devices in them that these huge companies have had for years. They don't market it as that. And they figured nobody's going to go out and spend $40,000-$50,000 on a medical device that has certain barriers to entry just to take it apart and not know how this thing works.
Right.
But this technology is in existence. You use it every day. It's just not available to the public, which is something we're trying to change.
Amazing. That's so interesting. Yeah, I think so really kind of to recap a lot of this, if we were able to raise say at the minimum of $50,000 to $150,000, we would be able to start on the solid state prototypes.
Right.
And then in terms of the frill crystal frill generator, it looks like that's already underway. You're just waiting on.
Yeah, I mean, we have ZPEDonate.com, and there's links on our site that goes right to our ZPE page. We have this page called ZPE that is a service where anybody can donate anything, $5 or 5,000, whatever you want. And there's no fees to us, right? So they cover all the fees. They're a not-for-profit that helps not-for-profits. You can donate. You can choose, I'm going to donate $1,000 and I'll donate another $110 to cover the processing fees, or not. Right. So we have that as a means for anybody to donate to our cause. And we've had some people donate a little bit of money, and we use it for traveling to do these things, or to buy, like I bought the 3D printing and the signal generator instead of it coming out of my pocket, which the last 2 years we've all self-funded. But if people want to contribute to our cause, we could do these things with it. So we don't really need anything for the crystal frill generator. That's just, it's in the works. And as soon as we have something, we'll let you guys know. But what we really want to do, the real focus, is the solid state shoebox canister device.
Okay.
And all in, it's going to be about $500,000, about 400 to 500,000 for us to build. Realistically, feasibly build, test, and get the schematics designs for a handful of them, for 5 of them. And then we have the ability to make 5 or 10 more and use them as in proof of concept applications. We have certain celebrities that are willing to put them in their house and attach them to their Tesla Powerwall instead of their solar. And there's test cases like things that you and I were talking about, off-grid type communities where we put one of these things in and it can run, a dozen small homes or something. We have practical applications with industrial water from air generators, and we would love to get together with some NGOs in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, where there's still enough humidity in the air, but people don't have access to water. mean, there's literally places in the world, half the world's population doesn't have access to electricity or potable water. That's ridiculous. It's over
Yeah.
3 billion
Wow.
people. Like this is what we're talking about, right? We're not talking about powering your home. If you can afford a $40,000 solar array, you're not worried about your power bill, right? We're talking
Yeah.
about the rest of the world and everybody to make
Mhm.
a difference, right? But there are villages in certain countries where the women, instead of being home or teaching the children or being productive or anything that they could be doing, they spend 4 hours of their day just walking to get water. We're in the United States, we kind of take these things for granted, right? But painting the picture, I know I'm digressing, but this is the real reason why we're here, right?
Yeah.
um 92% of the cost of everything you buy, you want to complain about inflation, 92% of the cost of everything is power input cost. If you eliminate this one problem,
Yeah.
scarcity goes away. You eliminate this one problem, you could build biodomes and grow forests of gardens of food anywhere on the planet. So we have an abundance of space. We just don't have clean water and energy going to those spaces.
There you go.
California, they're talking about desal projects. Desal, it works. It's just entirely energy. It's entirely too much energy is what it takes to run the process. So it's not really feasible. But if you throw one of these bad boys on a desal plant, then all of a sudden half the problem's gone. Now you just have to figure out what to do with the salt brine that comes out of it. But there's technologies that we know that we have in our sciences that like DuPont and these different chemical companies use that can take a lot of electricity and like water and take all of the pollution. We're talking even radioactive pollution, but all of the plastic that's in the ocean, all these different pollution, and zap it out of existence. That technology works. That's not even sequestered. Like this is stuff that's used instead of incinerators, so it doesn't put it out into the environment where your byproduct is clean water and fertilizer. Imagine
Wow.
converting all of our environmental problems into more clean water and fertilizer.
That's
And all
phenomenal.
you need is electricity. That's the missing part, why it's not feasible. There's only
Mhm.
huge companies that are required by law to clean up their messes, like chemical companies have this technology, because otherwise, you just throw it in a in a waste bin.
Exactly.
So there's huge potentials for this, and that's why we're doing this. It's really able to change the world. um what we need to do it, like I mentioned, is just a few $100,000, which should be a drop in the bucket to a lot of these people who are preaching green energy out in the world. This is
Yeah.
real green energy, like
Yeah.
not the fake green energy. This is not a Tesla car that doesn't use fuel, but instead
Right.
you plug into a coal-fired power plant power grid. I mean, you're still burning hydrocarbons. It doesn't make sense.
That's phenomenal. Yeah. No, thanks,
Oh,
Brian.
you can charge a Tesla with this thing. That's one of the things we're going to do as a test market. We actually want to take an EV and strip out 2/3 or more of the strip mined lithium ion batteries from it that burst into flames and all that other stuff, which is really what's harmful about a lot of the EV technologies, and stick one of these canisters under the hood. It produces enough power, just
Yeah.
runs the car, never have to charge it.
Yeah, that's so
So
exciting. And
imagine, right?
really,
An
yeah,
actual EV, a real Tesla.
a real and for a considerable low amount of money in order to do this research. And that's why I'm so excited we had the chance to talk and the chance to help share this with, with the people that we've got, in our community, which is still, slowly growing, but the word's
Right.
kind of getting out there, and, just raise awareness and try to break through some of the veils of disinformation and some of those things that have been an interesting experience for me. But, I'm glad. Thanks so much for making the time, and so
Absolutely.
many other lither little rabbit holes we could have taken that I'm also looking forward to maybe having you on again in a couple
Oh,
weeks. And so
what I appreciate what you're doing with level one communities. And I've told you offline, I'll tell it to the community here.
yeah.
You know, we have a treasure trove of archive information. Dozens of videos that any one of them has information on it that could be life changing.
Mm,
And these things aren't in print anymore, or were never like really circulated. So this is truly like the kind of stuff that your community likes. It's the stuff that you can't get your hands on. We have a lot of this stuff.
mm,
I will make it available, you know, free to your community's members who donate to, you know, be a part of your community for educational purposes and just enjoy it. I wouldn't mind giving you a video a week, you know, that people can go in and start looking at. We have some
okay.
really amazing stuff in
Excellent.
our archive. So I'll give that to you guys as well as these technologies as they come out. And I hope people, you know, new people coming into your community watching this, you know, both now and into the future can really be inspired by what we're trying to do together. Because realistically, our mission statement is the same as your mission statement. That's why you founded L1.
Mm,
Is to do what we're doing. We really want to democratize the energy sector,
mm,
make available technologies that have been stolen from the public. Um, and I think I want to close this idea just by saying, you know, we in one of our groups we have a consciousness and meditation group is one of our groups in ZPE project group. And this week's on the 13th, this week's mantra for the meditation was ZPE is our birthright. And that just really that sat well with me, right? Like I said at the beginning, I have kids now. And when they grow up and they're my age, or maybe when they have kids, our children and our children's children,
mm,
I don't want them to inherit a world worse off, right? You
yeah.
know, I want this to be something that we can say, hey, you know what? We got this problem. We solved this problem. Now go and do amazing things.
That's
And
great.
that's
Yeah,
what keeps me going.
that's beautiful,
I
man.
can wake up in the morning and do this, you know, knowing that that's what we're up to. So
Mm, it's such a great way to summarize it all. Thank you so much for that, Brian. And again, thank you so much for your time. I know we're right at about an hour here, so I thought I'll help wrap it up, and I'll get this out to the community here in a bit.
great.
And yeah, thanks again. Let me see here. I guess let's see here, recording. There it is. So